Selma, and welcome to my book journey. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome back, or welcome if you're here for the first time. I am here today to talk about the books that I read for the month of January, and I read quite a few good ones this month, and there was a couple that I didn't get around to doing, but for the most part I did read a lot of the books that I had set for myself for my TBR. And so I'm just going to go through these try to go pretty quickly and just kind of say, you know, what I read and how if I like them or not. And then also I want to let you know how they fit into all the reading challenges that I've been doing for this year, right? And so the first two books I'm going to talk about are for my reading challenge that I'm doing for 2025 is My Journey Through Time. And so I'm going to be reading through the decades and reading through the centuries. And so I read for the 1910s, I read Daddy Longlegs by Gene Webster, and this is an epistolary novel, and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of had a slow start for me because I had to get used to a book that was just letters, and then it's just letters written by one person. We don't have a going back and forth in letters. It's just you're reading just one person's letters, and so this is a classic, and I really enjoyed it. It was different, like I said, but it was good, and it had like a little twist at the end. So, and I do have a full spoiler review for this one and the next book I'm going to talk about in another video if you're interested in that, and I will link that down below. And so the other book that I read for my Centuries challenge, I don't have it anymore. I had to take it back to the library, but I'll put a picture up here, and that was The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh, middle grade book about a middle grade child going through the pandemic in 2020. And also it was a dual timeline because we're learning about his great grandmother Gigi's story in 1933, and she was living in the Ukraine, and her story was my favorite part of the book. It was pretty emotional, and to read everything that had happened to her and her family. And then that book also had a big twist at the end, a secret that she had not shared with anybody, and she shared it with her great-grandson. And that was a great book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that one, especially maybe for middle grade March coming up next month. Make sure you write that book down. Okay, so then the next book I read for January, this one took a lot of my challenges. It's called The Cloaked in Beauty by Karen Whitmire, and this one is the third book in the Texas Ever After series, and they're all fairy tale retellings. And this one is the retelling of, as you can tell, the Red Riding Hood. And this is the story of Letty Hood, is what her name is. Her real name is, oh gosh, what is her real name? Sure, her Letty is kind of like an alias that she takes up. And what the story is about is she is born into a family that is going through some turmoil. Her father and uncle had built a business at this time, and there was an animosity, and her uncle was pretty cruel, and they thought that he even caused her father's death when she was just a young child, and because he wanted to take over the great business that the two brothers had together. And so her mother hides Letty away so that the uncle cannot get her, because she's afraid for her daughter's life that he will try to kill her. That way he could take over the company that her father left. So it's pretty dramatic in that sense. And so we find, and she gets taken and put in hiding as a young child, and the plan was to bring her back to society when she turned 21, I think, so that she could be the full heir to her father's estate, and the uncle couldn't touch it. So they were keeping her in hiding so that the uncle wouldn't be able to get to her and kill her. And at the end of that time, her mother hired a Pinkerton to come and take her to, first of all, to find her, because even the mom didn't know where she was. So first of all, he had to find her, to locate her, and then bring her back escort her to safety back home. And so that's the story. And the Pinkerton's name is Philip. And so we have a little romance between Philip Pinkerton and Letty as they're traveling back home. So this counted for several things. It counted for Chantal Reads All Day, her reading challenge, because hers was beauty. So it had beauty in the cover, and it's a beautiful cover. It also counted for one of Katie's Princess Bride-a-thons, Red on the Cover, counted for that. I'm looking through my notebook here. And then it also counted for Oshina's challenge, because this was a new release. It just came out in just the very end of December. And then it also counted for Amanda, Book Lover Amanda's, because her challenge for January was Southern Homecomings, a book where a character goes home. And that's what Letty was, going home to her mom after being in hiding all that time. And so this one, I highly recommend. If you have not read any of the Texas Ever After books, I highly recommend them. I've enjoyed all 3 of them. Okay, so there's that one. The next book I did not actually read. I heard it on audio, and I think sometimes I wonder if I would like a book better if I would read it or if I listen to it on audio. The audio on this one was excellent. It just made me laugh and laugh and laugh. The people that did it were just amazing. And that's Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. And I've had this book on my shelf for a long time, and I finally got around to listening to it, and I loved it. And I can't wait to go on in the series. And so this is about a young woman named Izzy, that her aunt, I'm trying to think of who it is. It's like an older sister, because her parents had passed away, and she was taken in by her aunt and uncle. And then her aunt and uncle, like her cousins, basically became her brothers and sisters. And one of her, the eldest one, put her name or gave her or created an account like for a online dating service thing. And then she ends up meeting somebody, and then their whole thing is the reason I read this book was because this is also epistolary, and it's a bunch of text messages and text messages and emails going back and forth. That's what the whole book is, until the very, towards the end, it kind of changes. But most of the book is emails and text messages. Okay, so my favorite character in this whole book is Luke. Especially on the audio, he was just so hilarious. I just loved it. And so I want to read the 3rd book, is Luke, what's it called? Loyally Luke. I want to read that one. So I can't wait to I don't have it. I need to get it. Okay, so it's a love story between 2 people going back and forth, meeting each other online. And she lives in the States, and he lives in, is he in Scotland or Ireland? Oh gosh, I can't remember now. He's overseas. I think he's in Scotland. You're probably going to say, no, he's not. But anyway, it's really cute. What I really liked, and what was interesting, and I have a little tab here, because at the very end of the book, she's giving recommendations to somebody in a bookstore about books. And one of the books that she gives them is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Pie, this book, Peel Pie Society. She gives that recommendation, which is one I read, a book that I read this month. And then in the very next page, she says, and another book I want to recommend to you that's kind of like that is Daddy Longlegs. And I read both of these books this month. Didn't know that they were in this book. I just thought that was amazing. So I thought that was fun. So I really love this one, and I love the audio. That was definitely a 5-star read for me. Oh, and what did this one count? This one counted for, I think this was for, yes, this was for Jeanette. Jane Reed's, her January prompt was start a series. So this is book 1 in this, what's the name of this series? has to do with the place. The Skymar series. But anyway, this is book 1, so that counted for Jeanette's challenge. I think that was the only one. Oh no, and then I did another. I did two things in Katie's Princess Bride-a-thon bingo board, and this one was iocane powder to read in an audiobook, and that was an audiobook. Okay, next book is, this was for my jar pick that I have right there that I picked. I picked this one, and this one actually also had letters in it, so it counted for my epistolary month. I didn't know it at the time when I chose it, and it wasn't until I started reading it that it had letters in it. So I was like, "Whew, very good." So this is Homefront by Kristen Hanna, and this was not what I thought it was going to be at all. I knew it was going to be about a military family, but it was a different twist on a military family, because the person that was in the military was the mom. She was a helicopter pilot, and she got orders towards the beginning of the book. She was going to be sent overseas to serve in the Iraq War, and how that was going to affect her family. And she had 2 daughters, one pretty young, like she was barely going to turn 5, I think, and then like a preteen daughter, and then her husband. And at the time, right before she leaves, her and her husband were they were having some difficulty, and the husband basically told her that he didn't want to be with his wife anymore. You know, he told her he didn't love her. And I thought, how awful is this man? She's going off, you know, to tell her that he doesn't love her anymore after so many years of marriage, and then she's going to go off to fight in war. And I couldn't stand the husband. What was his name? Michael. And her name was Jolene. And she was such a strong character because she had a really horrible upbringing. She, in the beginning of the book, talks about what happened between her parents and her, and what happened, because of what happened to her, really made her strong to fend for herself, because it was only herself. And she pretty much built a wall around herself, and that kind of affected her marriage over time. And that was why he was having difficulties with her. And so but then she gets sent off to Iraq, and she was telling her family, she's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be they're not going to put me in the war zone area. I'll probably just do like fly important people here and there." You know, she was just trying to reassure them, and especially her daughters, but she really was in the thick of it. And so we have that. And it kind of reminded me of the book Kristen Hanna released last year, The Women, which I read, about nurses in Vietnam. So here we have a woman in the Iraq War and her experience. And then, like I said, I didn't like Michael, the husband, because of what he did, but he really redeemed himself to me because of what happened later on as the book progressed. So I did enjoy that part. I was like, I hope this doesn't have a bad ending, but I did enjoy it. I like Kristen Hanna's writing, and this one was another book that I really enjoyed, and so that was a good read for me. So I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. And this one, again, was my jar pick. Okay. Then let's talk about this one. This one is a book that I read with my daughter. We did a read aloud in our homeschool. And this one is another like epistolary novel because it's diary entries. And these are diary entries. The book's called A Picture of Freedom, The Diary of Clottie, a Slave Girl. And these are Dear America books, which we have read. I think this is our 4th one. We've done a young girl on the Titanic, Diary of a Girl on the Titanic, one girl that was on the Mayflower, and then a girl that was going on the Oregon Trail, and then this one. And for me, this was has been my favorite so far. My daughter, her favorite has been the Oregon Trail one. But this one, I was in tears at the end. These books always get me. So we have Clotilde, who is living on a plantation, and she's a young girl who is a slave, but she is so intelligent because she is learning, because in this time period, it's like 1859, I think, and her in her society, yeah, 1859, the slaves are not allowed to learn how to read or anything like that. And the way she learns is that she is watching. There's a young boy in the book that's the son of the master and the slave owner, and he is being taught by the mom at first, and then later a tutor. And Clotilde is there fanning, there's no electricity, there's no air conditioner back in the South, so her job as a slave is to fan them while they're being taught. And so while she's there doing that, she's listening and learning how to read at the same time. And so this is a diary of her and her circumstances and what happens on the plantation. And it's really horrible the way the slave owners treat the slaves that they have there on the plantation. And then we get introduced to what's called the Underground Railroad that's going through, and when she talks about it, she thinks it's like really underground and an actual railroad, and then learns later on that it's not. It's people helping one another, and what she learns about what an abolitionist is. And she's such a brave little girl and smart, and the story is really compelling. So I really enjoyed this one. And again, it's all diary form, this one. And yeah, so that's that one. Okay, and then I just finished reading this one, The Guernsey Literary and Potato Pie Peel Society. The title is crazy. I had heard so much about this book. I had heard, it's just a beloved book and everybody just loves it. It's an epistolary novel as well. And at first, it was a slow start for me. I was like, oh, this book, why does everybody love it so much? I don't know about this book. But I will say, as I went through it, and especially going through like this, there's part 1 and part 2 in the book. The book is about a young woman in London that's a writer, that is somebody, she receives a letter from a man in Guernsey that's on the Channel Islands off of England, and he finds a book, or gets a hold of a book that he ends up loving, that used to be hers because it has her address in it. And he writes to her and introduces himself and just starts telling her about himself and how he has her book, and if he really loved the author and he wanted other books by this author, and he didn't have them there on the island. So she starts writing to them, and she's curious about this society that he tells her about. And then the more she learns about it, she's like, that'd be an interesting book to write about this island and them being in how they made it through the occupation, because this is after the war is over when she gets this letter. And so Dawsey is the one that wrote to her. He gets the other people that are involved in this society to start writing to her. So the whole book is her going back and forth, receiving letters from multiple people that are on this island to tell her all the stories of the occupation. And that was really interesting. I really loved that part of the book, and the things that they went through, which were really horrible, and then how they all united with the society, and use that as a place where they can have some comfort during that time period when they were hiding out there and just being there for each other, like a found family almost. And then the second half of the book is actually her going to the island and meeting all these people that have come to really like her and really love her through letters. And when she gets there, they all know her already from letters, and then her being there in the island itself and it was just a really wonderful story. And there was a fun little thing at the end that was so cute with Isola and what she did. Her character was really cute. So we had some really cute, they had some really interesting characters in here. I liked the main character as well and what happened with her. And yeah, it was a really good book. I was glad I read it. It really is a good book, as everybody has said. And I did end up seeing, there was a little thing on here said Netflix had made a movie of it. And I did watch it. It was okay. They changed a ton in it and they left out a lot. But it was only like a 2-hour movie, so I could see why they would leave out a lot in the movie. They kind of crammed it all in. And I noticed that a lot of people on the show was like, oh, a lot of the actors were from Downton Abbey. And so that was kind of neat. And it was a really short movie. And like I said, they left out a lot of characters. And so it wasn't as good as the book. So great book. I really enjoyed this one. Okay. And then this book is my classics that I read for Anne's In Search of Wonder. Her prompt was read a book from your TBR. And this book was on my shelves and I picked it because it was a little guy. And then it also went with her scavenger hunt. Her scavenger hunt was read a book that has a male protagonist, is set in the winter, and that is a physical book. And so I had all three and it really was a winter setting. I mean, when I was reading this, I was cold because of the descriptions of how the snow was so deep and just the cold atmosphere. It was really good for a winter read for sure. Even though the cover, you can't tell by the cover. But this book, I read this with my husband and he was like, oh, it's terrible. He thought the story was just, he thought it was dumb. I think that's what he said. The ending was like, no. But it was like, to me, it was like a Hollywood movie. And as soon as I read him this one part, he mentioned a Hollywood movie. And I don't want to say it because it'll give away what happens at the end. But it was totally that kind of scene at the end. And if you've read it, if you've read it and if you can guess what I'm talking about, maybe put it in the comments and see. But anyways, a book about there's three people, like a love triangle, really, between a man that's been married to his wife for many years, and then a cousin comes to live with them, a young woman, and then he starts having feelings for her. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. A husband should not be having feelings for his wife's cousin. You know, just the practical thing about, infidelity. I mean, in the book, he doesn't do anything, but you can tell that he has feelings for her. He's watching her through a window as she's dancing with other people, and he's looking at her longingly. And I was telling that to my husband, and he was like, well, tell me more about this story. And as I'm telling him, reading certain parts from him, he's like, see, you hear that? You hear that? So the wife he has an interesting situation because Ethan Frome, I think he was an only child, sounds like, if I remember right. But his mother was very sick, and his father, I think, had already passed away. And so when his mother was very sick, it was just them two. And she was the only one that really spoke to him when he was younger. And that was the only person he spoke to. And then when she got really, really sick, she wasn't able to communicate with him. So he was living in silence, and you would say. And then a cousin of his came, or a cousin of the mother's, a family member came and helped him because he was just a young person when his mother was really sick. And so she came to help the mother and tend to her until she died. And then so since she was there, she was able to communicate now with him, so he wasn't totally alone. But then when the mother died, he realized, oh, well, now she's going to leave and I'm not going to have anybody here. So he married her so that she wouldn't leave. So he would have somebody to talk to. And that was why they got married, basically. And then as the years went on, he had dreams, and I think they had dreams of like selling that little farm that they have and moving out of this place and maybe going to Florida. He had, before his mom and his father had passed away, he had goals of going to school and being an engineer. But because of the situation, he wasn't able to afford college. So his dreams were kind of, he didn't live with those dreams of going to college and becoming an engineer. But now, as a married person, he had dreams of selling off this land and then moving to Florida, to be a nicer place. But nobody ever bought their farm. They weren't able to sell. So they kind of stayed there, and things just got worse. And his wife stopped speaking to him, basically. And because she wasn't speaking to him, they just grew apart. And then she became ill, and that's when her cousin came to stay with her. And then he starts talking to the cousin, and when he's around her, he feels like somebody's actually taking an interest in him and is willing to speak to him, and it's something that his wife hasn't done for him in a long time. So we have all that. But anyway, and then things happen. I liked the book myself. Like I said, my husband thought it was dumb at the end, but I liked it. For a classic, I didn't expect this for a classic. To me, I really liked it. So I'd be interested to read. The story was, I don't like hearing about a man it was an easy read. Not an easy read. It was like how would you say it? Not a fun read. It wasn't a fun read, but it was an enjoyable read. I don't know how to describe it. I just thought it was because I wanted to know what was going to happen. And I did find out that they made a movie of this, and I've only seen the trailer. I haven't seen the movie, and it has Liam Nielsen as this character. And let me know if you've seen that movie. We watched the trailer, and since we knew what happened in the book, we were like, oh, look. So I liked it. If you're interested, if you haven't read a lot of classics, this would be a good one, because it doesn't read like a classic at all. I thought it was really good. There we go. Okay, the last book I'm going to talk about is my book that I read for my biblical studies book, and this month was for hermeneutics, and this is put on by Read Love Joy, and she had us pick a hermeneutics book. And so I read Women of the Word by Jen Wilkin, and this is going to be one I'm going to have on my desk for the whole year, because she gives so many great insight and not ideas, but ways to really dig in deep and study for your Bible in a practical way, with things that you could do, and how you should be reading your Bible and studying your Bible. And I've got all these underlining points and ideas that I want to do this year. But it's a really good resource book that I can have on my desk when I need to look something up, and because it's set up to where you're not going to do everything all in one day. Little by little, you're going to start adding these things. She talks about like the main things: studying with a purpose, studying with perspective, study with patience, study with process, and then study with prayer, and then how we should look at the Bible as not what does the Bible say about me, but what does the Bible say about God and teach us about God, because that is the main reason we read the Bible, is to know God and to to know what he wants and desires of our lives, and who he is, though, who he really is. And let's see, I'm trying to find the place that it says one good thing, what she says Bible study should be: sound Bible study transforms the heart by training the mind, and it places God at the center of the story instead of, you know, me at the center. And sound Bible study increases Bible literacy in the long run when the more you read, and just all kinds of really great tips and thoughts about how we should study our Bible. So I highly recommend this one. Again, it's Jen Wilkin, Woman of the Word. Okay, so then I think those are all the books I read this month. Yep, that is all of them, and those were all the reading challenges that I read. I also am doing the 25 and 25, and I did check off number 20 was a fairy tale retelling. I did 31, an audiobook that has multiple narrators, which I did have. A book that has includes a diary entry, and then a book set in the 40s. So I checked off 4 of those this month. And then I participated in Epistolary January, that Anne in Search of Wonder was let's see, how many, I'm trying to think. It was Anne in Search of Wonder, Cheryl with Candlewick Library, and Jeanette from Jane Reads. I think that were all of them, and if I miss somebody, I will make sure I put them, and I apologize if I miss somebody. But I did I completed all the prompts. So we had love letters. I put the Guernsey Literary Potato Pie Peel Society for that one. Lost Mail, which was a classic, and that was Daddy Longlegs. And then Free Shipping was a book that was free, and that was my Daddy Longlegs. I found that in a little free library. And then Correspondence was any book that had letters, and I put Homefront because in that book, when she was in Iraq, she was writing letters back to her family. And then Airmail was a book set in a foreign country, and that was, I doubled up with Guernsey as well for that one. And then Package was a book longer than 400 pages, and that turned out to be Izzy, Authentically Izzy, so I used that one. And then Journal, a book containing journal entries, and that was A Picture of Freedom, the Diary of Clotie, the Slave Girl. And then the last one, Email, which is a contemporary epistolary featuring text or email, and that was Authentically Izzy. And so I'll put I put up here my board. I completed it. I love that when I can complete the board. And so that's it. Those are all the books that I read this month, and all the challenges, everything completed. So I think I had a really good month, and I don't know if I like epistolary novels, really. I don't know. I read a bunch of them this month, obviously, because it was for the prompt, for the theme. But it took me a while to get, especially the ones that were totally epistolary, like the Guernsey and Daddy Longlegs. It took me a while to get into it, I guess. And then I didn't read Authentically Izzy. I listened to it. And I really love that one. But I don't know would I have really loved it if I just read it in the book. I don't know. Because I have the second book, but I don't know if that one is epistolary. I haven't even looked at that one yet. But so it always makes me wonder if you like a book more or less. Okay, sorry about that. My camera just suddenly went off. So I don't know. I had to restart it. So I think I was talking about whether reading a book physically compared to listening to it on audio, and how that affects the way you perceive it and like and enjoy it. And so I really enjoyed Authentically Izzy, listening to it on audio, and I wonder if I would have enjoyed it as much as if I had read it, because reading those epistolary novels it took me a while to get into them. So I hope I didn't repeat myself, but I think that's what I was talking about. So those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I had a really good reading month. So in the comments below, let me know below, what was your favorite book of the month? And I feel like I'm lopsided now. if you read, sorry about that. If you read for Epistolary January, what was your favorite book that you read for that readathon? Yep, I think that's it. I think I'll end it here. I wanted to have a shorter video. I always try to, but somehow they always seem to be long. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and make sure you come back. Bye-bye. Have a blessed day.